Leo Simchaneawu, Kechamalea. My name is Alina Kawe, and I am the CEO of Red Star International. I am pleased to present a panel of leaders who are featured in the short documentary, From the Mountains to the Sea. The film highlights a meeting of Indigenous leaders from Arizona who traveled to meet the Maori peoples of the Whanganui River to participate in an exchange about the health and healing of our rivers. At home, our Colorado River is unwell. Earlier this year, the US government declared a shortage for the Colorado River, triggering cuts to the water supply. An unprecedented move for a river that supplies water to more than 40 million people. 30 tribes maintain historic ties to the Colorado River basin, yet the rules that guide its management have long been developed without them. Climate change and a mega drought threaten the river's health now more than any other time in history. Meet the panel who participated in the exchange as they share their reflections about the experience and their vision for the Colorado River basin.
Biggest memory, I think, on the trip when I reflect back on it that stands out the most is the people. Very generous, very nice, learning about some of their traditions. They're very knowledgeable.
The Maori were amazing. I think Native people, rich in culture and tradition.
It opened me up more as a Mojave woman, I would say in my language, as a Kama'ol, a Christian woman. It broadened my knowledge of who I am, of who others are.
My memories in visiting with the Maori people is that they're very, very humble people. Their survival to the river was very inspiring.
When I think about being there on the Whanganui River, off the grid for the 3 days that we were, it was magical.
We are over 8,000 miles away from New Zealand, and being able to connect with our Maori relatives was really special because there's a lot of commonalities, a lot of shared values, a lot of protocols that are implemented and a part of the culture with the Maori folks as well as within our own tribal community. So there was a very strong sense of belonging and a strong sense of caring and love.
Even though we're so far apart, we're not different in the sense of the reverence for our natural resources, water in particular. We view it as a blessing, whether it's falling to the ground or deep in the earth, as we are desert people.
You always grew up with the respect about water because water is life, but water also takes life. It took from my family not long ago. So there's that profound respect. So when we were part of the blessing, as we entered on the waterways before we start paddling downriver or upriver, I took the same initiative and told my family that's what we should do. So if anything, I think that's what we should do here. We bless the water. We now bless the water before everyone starts getting in it.
They talked about, I am the river is me. That was so important for people to really understand what that meant. I am the river is me. That wasn't just, something people say as a kind of like a slogan, or you really had to think about it and how it was explained to us about how the river does feed the land, the people, the animals, the entire ecosystem. And that really stood out to me about how important it is to keep that water clean and how much work went into protecting that water.
I recall them talking about why they had pursued giving the river personhood and to keep it healthy is to keep everything alive.
One of those nuggets of wisdom that I learned when we were by the Whanganui River is that the health of the water can reflect the health of the people. I think that it's interesting because the water and the different water sources in New Zealand are so pure and so clean and so fresh. That's a very different experience than here that I've had here in the States, especially in my own tribal community and in the surrounding area in Albuquerque. We have the Rio Grande River, and when you look at the river, it's so murky, like it's just so brown and you can't even see the bottom. I feel like every single water source we saw in New Zealand, again, carried those characteristics of purity and calmness, and there was just a peace about it.
In our creation stories, the water was given to us by our creator, Mustam Ho, when he drove his staff into the mountain and created the water and started its flow from then on, to the point where he saw that there was enough water, plenty of water, that he drove his staff again and made it stop. So those kind of belief systems becomes a religious, in a sense, importance. There's an importance put on it in that aspect.
Our tribe's been along the river since time immemorial, and the different things that were passed down and traditions you kind of hear about, of how basically the river was life. That's what kept the people alive through farming and fishing and all of these other things that the water was used for. And then when I think about the cultures down there, it's the same thing, right? It's water is life for any culture.
As Tohono O'odham members, we reside in the desert, and so we're known as desert people. But nonetheless, the water is under the desert, and so we have underground water that we have to protect, and we have to not take for granted. And so really being mindful and respectful of our environment, and to protect our environment, because the land that we live on today, any environmental impacts affect the groundwater and our survival. And so really taking to heart what that means to us as desert people, even though we don't have a river flowing next to our reservation, the water underneath us is just as sacred.
We also need to tell the people of the cultural and religious aspects of the water. That's missing. We got a lot of data, we got a lot of science, and I think going forward, we need to put that there. We need to tell about our story and how we connect to the water, because it's always been here. It was placed here for us. And our teachings tell us we are stewards of the land and of the water, when we need to act like it too.
Policy with tribes is at the federal level, and you deal with a lot of these things at the federal level. But when it comes to water, a lot of them you're dealing with the state, and it doesn't make sense. That's because the feds have given it to states, and then the states give it to, an advisory board, and you're sitting around the table with an advisory board of people that you're asking, why are these people or entities representing the governor or whomever on water policy, like mining companies or utility companies or other businesses? And they're talking to tribes who are responsible for their tribal constituents and their tribe and their lands. Doesn't make sense. So it is complicated, and it shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, everybody should have access to clean, healthy, safe water.
When we stand united in Native country to fight the battles and to reestablish our rights, more so when it pertains to water, that we stand really truly united and not work against each other when it comes to advocating for water rights, and continuing to stay strong on our ceremonies that involve water, rain ceremonies, and how we use water within our communities. Some of our communities still don't have running water.
We can foster the relationship to the Colorado River that our Creator gave us to be stewards of our river. And I think what we're doing now with the drought contingency plan, what contributions we are making, I guess, is a new era in saving the river.
With these drought contingency plans that are being put in place, it really makes you, think about, you got to protect what's there and that it stays there. We have to work with these agencies, these outside agencies, the federal government. It's not something that we could fix or do on our own. It's important that we're at the table when they talk about the future of water. If there's no water to be had, there's nothing to protect. And it's important that everybody kind of works together to make sure that the water is being protected.
One of the areas that I think about is our Black Wash and how there's a flood area here that floods every single year because of the monsoons. And one of the things that stood out to me was one of the presentations that we had there in Whanganui, and it was one of the leaders there who talked about working with the water instead of against the water, that instead of trying to divert that water, instead is understand that water is going to flow, and allow that water to flow and use it as education, use it as an opportunity to educate people about why that water flows the way that it flows.
The role of leadership is really where did we come from, where are we going? And that's something that needs to be passed on through us as current leaders to our future leaders. It's really important at the leadership level, but also at the youth level, to really understand what water rights settlements are, and really educating our members in regards to what our rights are. Even though we're at the lower end of the river, we know that the settlements and the entitlements of all of the tribes that benefit from the Colorado River vary from tribe to tribe. But it's really important that we uphold respect with our sister tribes, with all the tribes that benefit are utilizing the water from the Colorado River.
With the opening of our expansion in our museum, one of the things I thought was important was to have a educational portion of our water in the museum, and getting our youth educated about what they have. It belongs to them. So they need to know about it. They need to embrace it. They need to protect it. They need to honor it and respect it. But they also need to know the science of it, the history of it.
I'm real optimistic that the youth are starting to take note of that, and they ask questions, especially when they hear in the news about drought contingency plans and water levels reaching all-time lows. They're very interested about that stuff, and I think that's good. That shows that there is going to be a future of these young tribal members that are going to want to participate and take part in anything in regards to fighting for our water or our rights, or even the river itself.
I remember when I was by the Whanganui River, there was a lot of young people that were there that I got to hang out with for a little bit. And I just remember thinking about how playful and how healthy, those young ones are, and I think about, like, how do I transfer that to the communities here that we serve here in Arizona and here in the Southwest? We had a summer program. It was our first summer program through Native SOAR. And one of the lessons that I got to facilitate with our students was focused on we are land protectors. The trip that we went to New Zealand and interacting with the tribal communities and with the Maori, I have a deeper sense of how to holistically describe or create a curriculum that could help these young people understand more about what it means to protect our land and protect our waters. My hope is that it would spark an interest in them, for them to understand more about how can I help or how can I give back to ensure that our land and our cultural resources are preserved.
Not only that we have water that's clean, running, potable, we can drink that water, but that it's also feeding into our plants, and that we have those plants. Here in the Sonoran Desert, we have that vegetation, that we have those mesquite trees, and we have what it is that we naturally grow out here, and that the environment looks the way that it should.
We all agree that water is a blessing, it's sacred, and it's life.
My vision for the Colorado River is that one day it'll be healthy. One day that the waters would be from the West Bank to the East Bank, that it'd be full. And my vision is for it to be clean and not polluted. But we have to work together again to save the river for future generations.
I would like to acknowledge the leader panel and thank them for sharing their reflections about the interconnection between our health and the health of the environment. Knowledge is deepened when learning experiences foster connection, mutual respect, and a shared vision. By coming together as a global Indigenous community, we generate new ideas about what is possible and identify pathways to a sustainable future for the coming generations. I would like to thank Te Po Tupua and Whanganui Iwi for hosting the exchange in 2020. We look forward to their reciprocal visit when we can bring them to our traditional homelands in Arizona and once again meet face to face.